In the world of classic car restoration, a beautiful paint job is the easiest thing to fake. Anyone with a spray gun and a few $1,000s can make a rusted piece of junk look like a masterpiece from 20 feet away. But collectors don't pay $1 million for paint. They pay for the beating heart of the machine. They pay for matching numbers, the absolute guarantee that the massive V8 engine block sitting under the hood is the exact same one that was bolted into the chassis at the factory 50 years ago. Restoring a legend takes thousands of hours of bleeding knuckles, breathing in rust, and hunting down microscopic decades-old parts. It requires an uncompromising dedication to the truth. I spent my entire life rebuilding broken machines, making sure their insides matched their outsides. I just never realized that the most deceitful broken machine in my life was the woman sleeping in my bed. My name is Garrett. I'm 39 years old, and I am a master automotive restorer. 7 years ago, I married Vanessa. When we met, Vanessa loved the romanticized aesthetic of the vintage car world, the leather jackets, the loud engines, the photo shoots, but she was a high-end luxury lifestyle consultant, and she quickly realized that the reality of my job involved a lot more dirt and grease than glamour. 6 years ago, I found the Holy Grail rotting in a barn in the Midwest, an original 1969 Shelby GT500. It was a rusted-out shell, but the original 428 Cobra jet engine was still sitting next to it. Over 6 grueling years, I spent every weekend and every dime I had bringing it back to life. Every bolt, every wire was period correct. It was a museum-grade masterpiece. Evaluators estimated that at a premium auction, it would easily cross the $1 million mark. I told Vanessa this car was our retirement. I promised her that when we sold it, we would buy a house on the coast and she would never have to worry about money again. I gave her my unconditional trust. But Vanessa didn't want to wait for the auction block. She looked at my grease-stained hands and decided she wanted the $1 million without having to endure the mechanic. The corrosion in our marriage started when Vanessa's consulting firm took on a new client, a massive exotic car dealership in the city. The owner of the dealership was a man named Julian. Julian was 42 years old and the absolute poster boy for the worst kind of automotive broker. He wasn't a mechanic, he was a salesman. He wore $10,000 Rolex watches, drove a bright yellow leased Lamborghini, and talked endlessly about asset portfolios and market disruption. He bought cars he didn't understand and sold them to naive rich guys for a massive markup. In my world, guys like Julian are parasites. Suddenly, Vanessa was spending all her time at Julian's glass-walled showroom, claiming she was advising him on his brand expansion. The red flags didn't just quietly appear, they lit up like a massive check engine light. First, the profound, unapologetic disrespect for my life's work. Vanessa started actively belittling my restoration process. "Garrett, you need to be realistic," she scoffed one evening, tossing her designer bag onto our kitchen counter. "Julian moves millions of dollars of inventory every month. He operates in air conditioning. You're just a grease monkey obsessed with old iron. You lack corporate vision. Nobody cares about the dirty work. They care about who controls the sale." Second, the intense, unnatural secrecy regarding her devices. Vanessa changed her passcode on her phone. She started taking crisis marketing calls in her car, sitting in the driveway with the engine running for 40 minutes before coming inside. Third, and by far the most terrifying, was her sudden, highly specific interest in the paperwork for the Shelby. Vanessa, a woman who absolutely loathed the garage, suddenly asked me exactly where I kept the physical, notarized title for the car, and if the insurance policy covered theft if the car was parked outside the main shop. When a luxury consultant suddenly cares about the physical location of an unsold $1 million title, you don't answer the question. You put the car on the lift and you look for the leak.
Because I often need to order parts while my hands are covered in oil, we keep a shared iPad in the house that responds to voice commands. One evening, while Vanessa was working late in the city, I picked up the iPad to order some gaskets. Vanessa had neglected to close her WhatsApp desktop client. I didn't just find an affair. I found a premeditated million-dollar act of grand theft auto in insurance fraud. Julian wrote, "The buyer in Germany is fully confirmed. He's an oligarch willing to pay $1.2 million in untraceable crypto. He doesn't care about the auction houses. He just wants the Shelby in a shipping container by Sunday night. Do you have the spare keys and the title?" Vanessa replied, her words dripping with a casual, horrifying cruelty that made the blood freeze in my veins. "I took the spare key yesterday. The title is in the safe. I know the code. Here is the plan. Garrett is leaving for the Detroit Auto Show on Friday morning. On Friday night, you bring the enclosed trailer to the house. You load the Shelby, take the title, and drive straight to the port. On Saturday morning, I'll call the police crying and report a home invasion and grand theft. Garrett will be devastated, but he'll get the $1 million insurance payout eventually. We take the $1.2 million crypto from the German, and I'll serve Garrett with divorce papers from our new villa in Spain. The grease monkey is going to fund our empire." Julian responded, "You're a genius, my love. The mechanic is going to buy us our next yacht. Get the keys and get ready." I sat alone in the quiet house, staring at the glowing screen as my entire reality shattered into a million pieces. My wife of 7 years was sleeping with a corporate parasite. Together, they were actively plotting to steal 6 years of my blood and genius, traffic a stolen vehicle internationally, commit federal insurance fraud, and leave me utterly destroyed, filing a fake police report. They thought I was just a naive, dirt-kicking mechanic. They didn't understand the level of absolute, unmitigated mechanical destruction a master restorer is capable of engineering.
If you want to destroy a rival car dealer, you don't slash the tires of their inventory. You let them build a beautiful showroom, invite the wealthiest buyers in the world, and then you quietly remove the engine block. I didn't confront her. If I did, Julian's army of lawyers would bury me in injunctions, claim the car was a marital asset, and tie it up in court for a decade. I needed them to steal the car. I needed Julian to proudly present my masterpiece to a ruthless billionaire buyer. So I went to work in the grease. That night, while Vanessa was fast asleep, I went into the garage. Over 6 hours, working with absolute agonizing precision, I disconnected the transmission, the fuel lines, and the motor mounts of the Shelby. Using my heavy-duty hoist, I completely removed the priceless, original 428 Cobra Jet V8. I packed it in a crate, loaded it into my heavy-duty truck, and drove it to a highly secure private storage unit across town. But I didn't leave the engine bay empty. Earlier that day, I had gone to a local scrapyard. I bought a completely dead, rusted-out 3-cylinder engine block from a 1994 Geo Metro, a tiny, pathetic economy car. I brought it back to my shop, haphazardly bolted it onto a custom subframe, and dropped it into the massive, empty engine bay of the Shelby. It looked absolutely ridiculous, a tiny, rusty cube of garbage sitting inside a $1 million muscle car. But the trap needed to remain hidden until the final moment. So I disconnected the standard interior hood release cable. I installed a set of heavy-duty, hidden hydraulic deadbolts that physically locked the hood to the chassis. The only way to open the hood was to trigger a specific electronic sequence from a hidden switch under the dashboard. If Julian pulled the interior lever, absolutely nothing would happen. I closed the massive hood. It locked permanently. From the outside, the paint was flawless, the stance was aggressive, it looked like $1 million. I went back inside, washed the grease off my hands, and kissed my cheating wife goodbye the next morning. "Have a great time at the auto show, Garrett," she lied smoothly, wearing her expensive designer coat. "I will," I said, looking her dead in the eyes. "Take good care of the house. You know that car is my masterpiece." I drove away. I let her bring the thieves into my garage. I let them steal the bomb. Now, they just had to open the hood.
I didn't go to Detroit for the auto show. I drove straight to the local police precinct and met with the lead detective for the auto theft task force. I sat down at his desk. I handed him the physical, notarized title to the Shelby. I handed him the WhatsApp transcripts of Vanessa and Julian explicitly conspiring to steal the car, traffic it internationally to a German buyer, and commit insurance fraud. My wife and her accomplice are going to steal this $1 million vehicle from my garage tonight. They're going to load it into an enclosed trailer and drive it to a private warehouse near the port to sell it to an overseas buyer. The detective reviewed the documents, read the fraud admission, and smiled. Garrett, stealing a classic car of this value and attempting to export it is massive, willful federal grand larceny. We won't stop them at your house. Let them take the trailer. Let them meet the buyer. We will bust them with the money in hand. Perfect, I said. I installed a hidden GPS tracker in the trunk. I'll send you the live link. On Friday night, sitting in a motel room 3 towns over, my phone notified me that the garage door had opened. I watched the GPS icon of my Shelby slowly move down the highway. Julian had loaded the shell into his trailer, completely unaware that it was missing 800 pounds of engine. They were laughing. They thought they had just executed the perfect, untouchable heist. They had no idea they were driving into a federal trap. Saturday morning, the private warehouse near the international port. Julian had backed his enclosed trailer into the warehouse. The buyer's representative, a stern-looking man flanked by private security, was waiting with the crypto transfer ready on his tablet. I wasn't in the warehouse, but the police reports and the warehouse security cameras captured every single agonizing, humiliating second of Julian's execution. Julian proudly rolled the beautiful Shelby out of the trailer. The buyer's representative was visibly impressed by the flawless, deep blue paint and the aggressive stance. "The restoration is magnificent," the representative said with a thick accent, "but before we transfer the $1.2 million, standard protocol applies. I must verify the matching serial numbers on the original 428 Cobra Jet engine block. Open the hood." Julian smirked arrogantly. Of course, prepare to be amazed. He reached into the driver's side and pulled the interior hood release lever. Clunk. Nothing happened. The hydraulic deadbolts held the hood completely flush. Julian frowned. He pulled it again, harder. He started sweating. He walked to the front of the car and tried to pry his fingers under the lip of the hood. It wouldn't budge a millimeter. The buyer's rep crossed his arms, his patience vanishing. "Open the hood, Julian. Now." Panicking, desperate for the $1 million payout, Julian grabbed a heavy steel crowbar from his truck. He jammed it under the pristine $15,000 aerodynamic nose cone of my car and violently pried upward. He damaged the paint and bent the metal, sweating and cursing until the hydraulic locks finally snapped with a loud crack. The massive hood swung open. Julian and the buyer leaned in, expecting to see a gleaming, massive V8 engine. Instead, they stared into the cavernous, empty engine bay. Sitting dead center, mounted haphazardly on a steel bracket, was the rusted, tiny 3-cylinder Geo Metro engine block covered in cobwebs and grease. The buyer looked at the junk engine. He looked at Julian. His face turned bright red with pure, unadulterated rage. "You insult me with this garbage," the buyer roared, shoving Julian back against the fender. "This is a scam. You are a fraud. There is no engine." Before Julian could even stammer out a pathetic excuse, the massive rolling doors of the warehouse violently burst open. 4 police cruisers and 2 unmarked federal USVs tore inside, sirens blaring and lights flashing, boxing in Julian's truck. Heavily armed officers poured out, weapons drawn. You cannot unsell a rusted lawnmower engine to a billionaire in front of the police. The fallout was an absolute apocalyptic corporate massacre. Julian was thrown against the side of his own trailer and handcuffed on the spot for felony grand theft auto and attempting to traffic stolen goods internationally. The buyer's representative, realizing he was caught up in a stolen car sting, cooperated fully with the police and handed over Julian's forged export documents. Meanwhile, back at our house, Vanessa was asleep, dreaming of her new life in Spain. At 6 a.m., the police kicked her front door in because the WhatsApp text messages explicitly named her as the co-conspirator who stole the keys, provided the title, and planned to file a false police report. She was arrested in her designer pajamas and dragged out in handcuffs in front of all our neighbors. Julian's exotic car dealership was investigated by federal authorities, who discovered he had been washing titles on luxury cars for years. His business was seized, his assets were frozen, and he was sentenced to 7 years in a state penitentiary. Vanessa, terrified of federal prison, took a plea deal and turned state evidence against Julian. She avoided jail time, but she is a convicted felon. During our divorce, she had absolutely zero leverage because she had actively conspired to commit grand larceny against the marital estate. The judge awarded me 100% of our assets, the house and the shop. She walked away with massive legal debt and a permanently ruined life.
It's been almost 3 years since that weekend. The police returned the Shelby to my shop the next day. I fixed the damaged hood latch, buffed out the paint Julian ruined with the crowbar, and dropped the glorious original 428 Cobra Jet V8 back into the engine bay. A month later, I sold it, legally, at a high-end auction for $1.1 million to a legitimate collector. I used the money to buy a massive piece of commercial land and built my dream restoration garage. And now, I run a multi-million-dollar classic car business, and I never have to worry about money again. Last I heard, Vanessa's working the front desk at a budget car rental agency at the airport. She watches people drive away in cheap plastic cars every single day, while she takes the bus home, completely cut off from the luxury life she tried to steal. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's this. A beautiful exterior means absolutely nothing if the engine is missing. If your partner thinks they can use you as a stepping stone, steal your masterpiece, and leave you to rot in the grease while they take the millions, don't panic, don't fight them for the keys. Smile, leave the garage unlocked, let them load the trailer, and let them confidently unveil their prize to the most ruthless people in the world. And right when they think they've struck gold, pop the hood and watch their entire world stall out. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments, what's the most satisfying mechanical failure you've ever witnessed? Stay sharp, trust your tools, and always check under the hood.